Hello and welcome to IT Security Labs, and thank you very much for joining me tonight. I have yet another interesting machine for us to be learning. I'm excited to be sharing with you an interesting machine that I made. I made a new virtual machine this week and I called it Bypass. As you can see, uh, the goal here is for us to learn Active Directory enumeration and attacks so that we can get better at being pen testers, red teamers, offensive security people. But at the same time, I have it set up so that we also understand what happens on the wire. So if you're going to be sending these tools like PSExec, which you're going to be using today, and PowerView, what does that mean? I mean, it's PowerShell, you can read the code, but what does that look like for the defenders when you use those tools? And that's another interesting thing that I'm going to be showing you today. Not only how noisy these tools are, but hopefully this gives you an idea before you run a tool to think about how much noise you're actually going to be generating. And also, if you're trying to do evasion, what that means. So if you are interested in learning how to attack Active Directory and also how to detect and defend, you are definitely in the right place. And I think you're going to learn a thing or two today. As you can see, I generated 151,910 PowerShell information log events. Oh, how did this happen? Can this be avoided? And what tool generated these? I'll give you a hint. It's PowerView. I ran PowerView to do enumeration, and this is how much noise it generated by just running it. And I'm going to show you right now. So we just jump into our Kali Linux. If we do an nmap, it's part of our enumeration. We're given a machine, we know nothing about it. What is the first thing that we do? We run our trusted nmap -sv -sc. So service version, service scripts, default scripts in this case, on 192.168.38, 236. That's where my machine is. I got this IP address from DHCP. So if you call this maybe a gray box, pen test, whatever you want to call it, but we have an IP address. We want to know, how can we break in? So I'm going to show you here what you can do if you're faced with an Active Directory machine, how you can tell whether or not it's a domain controller, and maybe some functionality that is doing. Maybe it's a file server. I'll show you some common ports that show up. But at the same time, let's go and check out the noise that we're generating. We're running a tool already, right? We have an intrusion detection system here. In this case, it's Security Onion. Security Onion is getting a copy of all the traffic that's coming to and from my victim, and we are actually able to see everything. So in a second here, I'm looking in the last 20 minutes, we should start seeing indicators that nmap has been ran. So if I look, we don't see any yet. But after a couple minutes, you are going to see that nmap user agent will show up that is being ran. And there we go. I just refreshed it with you live here. Here's the ET scan. These are just default nmap scripts that are being seen. We're scanning for, common ports. And once we find common ports, we're enumerating for the versions. And as you do that, you get caught. So with nmap having been caught, let's move on to our results. So if, let's say you're doing a pen test or you are part of an exam for some of these tests out there, the moment you see port 53, okay, people run DNS everywhere, that's fine. Then you see 88 with 53, your mind straight goes to must be Windows, must be Active Directory. And the confirmation that it's actually Windows, it will actually say it's Windows, but for you to know that this is the domain controller, you're going to see Kerberos service running there, which is one of the dead giveaways that this is actually a domain controller. Then, of course, if you look down here, you'll see other Active Directory specific services like LDEP running. Now, it's a dead giveaway. This is a domain controller that's running. There are going to be ports here that are going to be normal, and you can just put them all together and say a domain controller is going to have these ports open, like 139, 389 for LDEP. These ones come pre-packaged with a domain controller, and this 3289. So most of these, you're going to say, okay, I get it. It's a domain controller. I don't have to go port by port and say, oh, let me enumerate port 53. In this case, 53 might help you, but maybe most likely not, because it's just a domain controller. We can try to mess with it, but as we scroll down here, you notice something strange. I say strange mostly because you're going to see that a normal person understands that a Windows Active Directory domain controller, it is one of the most important devices on a network. I'm talking, it's in the same level as your firewall, as your routers and switches. You do not mess around with your domain controller, right? It's doing very important things like, Kerberos for authentication. So you do not install websites on it, like CMS solutions. You don't use it as a file share. You don't use your domain controller as a staging for some SQL server. You run your SQL server somewhere else. There is no real reason why you should overload your domain controller with other services, because if those services get compromised, they will get on your network. So in this case, this administrator made a serious mistake of running a CMS solution on the domain controller. Let's assume they were trying to save money on Microsoft licensing. The licenses can be very, very expensive. So that's what they were doing. Hello, everyone. I see Royal and RX100. Thanks for joining. So we found a mistake here. Why do I say this is a mistake? As an attacker, I know this is a domain controller. They are the classic domain controller enumeration strategies that I can start throwing at this thing. But to see a CMS on the same machine, I'm more interested in this at the same time. But let's see what we can start with here. Just to give you an idea of where you can start if you saw a domain controller, you can just start by maybe running crackmap exec. We saw our domain controller and we have port 445 also running there. So crackmap exec is already on my machine. I can run this command here. I already have one that I pre-made, so you don't watch me type it, but I'll explain to you what we're doing here. We saw port 445 running. It's running SMB version 2, I think. So with that, we can say, hey, crackmap exec, which is a tool that you can use. Can you reach out to the SMB service on our IP address? We'd like you to just try this bogus user. I just made it up. Subscribe with a blank password. But I would like you to actually brute force this system. And in this case, I would want you to actually go out there and get me some information from the domain. So let's run it, and I'll show you what we can find. A lot of information. So if you have done Hack the Box, this is a classic. What I'm just doing here, this is not something I made up or I came up with. This is a classic. You see a domain controller with SMB open, throw a crackmap exec at it. And right away, this thing just starts talking. It's like, yeah, hey, my name is DC on port 445. The domain is win domain. Here is a username that I found. Here is a user that I found. Here is a group that I found. So by just seeing it as a domain, crackmap exec with SMB, if this thing is vulnerable, it starts spitting out information. So this is a classic without touching or exploiting any other service. I'm just asking for information using crackmap exec. There are a lot of other things you can do. So the logical thing here is save all these users to a file, right? Clean them up, maybe org, grep, whatever you do. Remove all this noise, maybe just end up with these users here as a list. Then you can generate potential usernames. So for example, this is a username that you might want to try out in the future. There is an ugly and terrible thing to do at the same time, but of course, it's a lab environment. We have to do it. With this list of users here, we can brute force. We can brute force using roku.txt. Let me know in the comments right now what the problem is when you're dealing with Windows systems of brute forcing users using roku.txt. What can happen to me? Help me understand here. If I just pick this list here and I'm just going to throw Hydra or you know, correct map exec and just brute force the service that I found, what could be the problem? Because I did find port 389, which is Windows Remote Desktop. I can brute force that. Let me know before I say anything about that what the problem might be of brute forcing. But for now, I'll skip. I won't be brute forcing anything. I have a user list. Spoiler alert, when you see users you're more interested in, you start looking at, not only are you looking at the groups that are there, but also any service accounts. Service accounts are notorious for having passwords that don't expire, passwords that are usually simple sometimes because people are lazy. So this HTTP underscore SVC looks like we also have MySQL service account, and we also have HTTP service account. These are different accounts. By the way, as you can see, service accounts have this $sign at the end here, including the Exchange service account. Let me make sure you can see this and make sure that I'm not on the way. Yeah, I'm not on the way. Service accounts have this $sign here. This one is created looking like a service account, but it's not I mean, it's used as a service account, but it can log in based on what we understand from looking at this. Those are the little nuggets you can tell by just looking at this. But we also have IT admins. It'll be interesting if we find a user who is part of this group, because IT admins, most of the time, they have the ability to change passwords, join computers to the domain. They might not be enterprise admins for the entire forest, or even like domain-wide admins, but they have capabilities. So it's an interesting one. Office admins, they might also have local privileges here. Senior management, project management. So these are just different groups, but so far we ran one simple command using correct map exec, and this thing started coughing information. So let's stage this for now, put it on the side. That's a potential way of doing things. Someone said logs. I had asked like, hey, do you actually want to brute force these people? If you brute force, you get a lot of logs. In fact, let's do it. This is a lab environment for a reason, right? Let's brute force this thing using Roku.txt and correct map exec. I'm going to show you what it looks like because that's the fun part, right? So with correct map exec, you can say, hey, using SMB, can we brute force this IP address using the user? In this case, I'm using HTTP underscore SVC, that actual user. And for the password, I'm throwing a common word list, Roku.txt. One thing that I want you to know is that by doing this, I'm most likely going to get this account logged, because the domain says if somebody fails so many times, that account needs to be logged. So I might get myself logged out. And if I do, I might have to reset my machine. You know what? Let's not brute force that user. Let's brute force a different user. I don't want to brute force my user because I like that account. Now I don't have my list of users. Okay, let's do it one more time. I just need a valid account, and then I'll brute force that instead of that account that I just showed you, because I do not want to get logged out. Okay. Let's find a valid user using correct map and then brute force them. I'll just do that. All right. I stopped it and generated some errors. Come on, give me. Stopped before users started coughing up. Okay. Oh yeah, I do not want to lock myself out of the domain, the machine. Then I won't be able to exploit it. That's the user that we're going to be using. Okay, let's use this user here. This is our victim. We can actually verify that this user has been locked out. But let's brute force that. And by that, we'll create our command. Okay. Now let's go back to our intrusion detection system. So far, let's normalize these logs. I know they are kind of loud, but let's refresh in the last 20 minutes. I'm going to change this maybe to the last. Let's do 5. All right. We have a clean slate here. Well, kinda. We get some interesting Windows audits logs. Let's go and brute force and see if we get caught. So what we're doing here is we're throwing the kitchen sink at our user account from this here. And we're like, hey, we just need to try any password. Let me know how many entries are in roku.txt, because that's going to be a lot. All right. If we give it a minute or so, it will index in the background, and we'll start seeing a user getting logged out, or at least failures. All right, there we go. What do you think is happening here? So far we have 9, right? Actually, 37 logon failures. Let's refresh. Okay. Windows audit failure event. That's 311. Okay, this is the one that I was waiting for. Logon failure, unknown user, or bad password. So anyone with a decent intrusion detection system will catch you. Number 2. Number 1, you'll get that user logged out. So let's stop the brute force. You might be able to find the password if, for whatever reason, they are really not monitoring. But by doing so, you get caught. Let me show you what the log looks like. I hope my Elasticsearch is not complaining too much. All right, so that was 1. I'll show you once the log comes up. Oh yeah, that's a lot of entries. 14,341,564 entries in roku.txt. Thanks, BT. Yeah, so unknown user failures. So you see a lot of those entries in your log, and this is what the log looks like. It's just a Windows log. Since I'm sending all the logs here using Sysmon, I'm able to see. So anyone who is running a Windows environment, they need to do this. Just go ahead and just, put a logging system like Security Onion or something. You'll be able to see this easily, like what's happening here. Too many failures just for one user. Okay, so we don't like that. Instead, we're going to go to 192.168.38.236. We saw that we have a port that is running Victor CMS. It's actually running on port 9000. I would not have seen it with my top 1000 scan. But if you scan the system, we saw another service that should not be there, and it's called Victor CMS, and I put it on port 9000. I put it on port 9000 because I wanted people to actually scan the entire, range instead of just the top 1000, because I don't think 9000 is one of the ports there. But let's look what let's see what's happening there. It's kind of like a slow site, but it will load for us. I see Victor CMS. So right away on the banner here, it says Victor CMS. I'll just go and look up that CMS. CMSs are notorious for having vulnerabilities. There we go. So that's our Victor CMS with my little picture here that I added. I was like, hey, just follow me and subscribe. Okay, Victor CMS. Do we have a version? Do we have the year that this thing was released? Anything that can help me here? Okay, we have a user, Victor. We can actually, the first thing that we can start doing here is we can start clicking around. Do we have any news? Oh, here's an admin panel. What does it do? Here's a login page that you should do SQL injection on. test for SQL injection. And here's a registration page, which you should also not only register, but check for SQL injections. It should be part of your methodology. In fact, if you do SQL injections here, you'll notice that it is actually vulnerable to SQL injection. So let's add a user. What should we name this user? Can I just name him sub? Because I don't want to type too much. sub@mail.com. Password sub. If this thing takes the password sub, it's really bad. Okay. Don't save. And look what it's doing. It's actually going. It created a user. And we're in. The first thing is, it'll be a gross issue. Look, it says, welcome to the admin page. A new user just signed up is now an admin. I mean, this thing is bad. That's how bad it is. Then you can go here and say, oh, I can view all the users. Maybe I can reset their passwords as well. We have a bunch of users here, but I'm not interested in them. I'm already admin myself. So maybe I can add another user. Well, since we're there, hi. This is like how I do things. hi@mail.com. Password is hi. Okay, I see that I have the file upload feature. The first thing that we do, file upload, it's a site that is in PHP. We just go ahead and give it a PHP file and see what happens, right? That's like the normal thing. Is like, hey, if I can change my user profile, the goal is they should be monitoring only for PNG or JPEGs. Anything PHP, ASPX, they should be refusing. But are they doing it here? We should find out. So go to here, see the let's go to my desktop. Let's put echo some PHP web shell code. Oh, by the way, I think we can do it even easier. I'll just combine these two together, because if you also look up this CMS, it does come with its own vulnerability here. Arbitrary authenticated file upload. If you just look it up, like simple Google search, you'll be like, hey, this thing in the admin add user parameter, you can actually upload a file. And if you go through this, they already gave us. And by the way, this is why I like to do. They already gave us the PHP that we can actually put in our file. Is this one. Then I'll add this to my notes. What this is going to do is it's going to give us a command injection via the browser, which we like. So we copy this one. Let's echo that. I was going to use my notes, but might as well do it that way. rev.php. I think that works. Just in case rev.php exists. What did I do wrong here? .php. It was trying to mess with the quotes for me. So now I can actually see the colors. All right. So we have a PHP reverse shell, not reverse shell, web shell that we're going to be uploading here. Then let's browse. All right. And here's my rev.php. Open. Hey, Network J, thanks for joining. Appreciate you being here. Let's add the user. User created successfully. Perfect. So now let's just go back here. This is our exploit DB result. You can find it on Sexploit, but this is Victor CMS. They tell us where this thing is. Oh yeah, if you go down here, you can go to the site. In the image, whatever you named your PHP, you can do cmd equals to. So this looks like a Linux one, but it works for Windows as well. Just know that. So we just need to have this. Come back here, remove all that, and paste it right here. Instead of exp, we named ours rev. Command equals to who am I? By the way, the who am I command is a terrible idea as well, because I think some people detect on that. I don't think my lab is looking for the who am I commands, but I know they are just default detection rules that just look for who am I. So maybe want to stay hidden. But hey, we can actually run commands here. Let me know what you think in the comments right now. What should I do next? How can I get a fully functional shell from here? There's one way that I'm very, very used to, and I've shown on this channel so many times to get a fully functional reverse shell here. But I'm curious what people suggest here. And by the way, the one way that I don't like it anymore, because I'm going to show you here why I don't like it anymore, because the detection on it is very simple. It's very simple to detect. So while I'm going to look at this who am I command and this rev.php in our intrusion detection system, let me know in the comments, how should we get our reverse shell, or how can we actually get a fully functional shell here? But just because you got that working doesn't mean that defenders don't see or find you. They might find you, or they will find you. So first, let me see if I have any default rules that we're looking for that. I did not create any rules today to detect the who am I command, but it's a terrible idea to run who am I. Unless if you are confident, okay, who am I didn't get caught here. All right, so this one doesn't actually seem to catch who am I, but we can find it here. If we go to a different view of our data in Discover, we're going to look, because we did something on the network and it was seen. So we're going to find it. And what this, the reason why I'm doing this is, if my job was to do detection, I'll be interested. Can I create rules around this if I'm actually already missing it? So let me just look in the last 15 minutes. First, let me look for the URI. HTTP URI should contain maybe *rev.php. I don't know what it looks like, but the URI should have rev.php. Okay, I see one. So we only did it once in the last 15 minutes. We see one here. But as you can see, it's rev.php, cmd is equals to who am I. So if you were hunting for this attack and you had other information and you kind of knew what was happening here, you can actually dig in here and find out, oh, this is kind of silly. They just showed up in here and just ran a who am I command. Okay, so we don't have a rule that catches it, but it actually does. Here's an interesting thing too. HTTP user agent was set to curl. I actually ran it through a browser, as you saw there. So I think my browser has, did I change my browser to say the user agent is curl? Yeah. I was like, why did my user agent change? Look at it here. My HTTP user agent, at some point on one of my probably live streams, I went in here and I said, hey, from now on, I want my browser to be saying it's running as curl. So maybe next time, let's just change it to wget. This is kind of, this will throw some defenders off because they're like, oh, they ran a curl command. Well, it was, this user agent that I messed with a while ago. Okay. Robert says, do you have a job as a pen tester? No, I do not have a job as a pen tester. I recently moved to a red team. All right. So next, let's do it this way. We have command injection, command execution on our system. Let's bring up Nisheng. Nisheng is a PowerShell script that just gives us reverse shell. It goes out to the system and we get reverse shell using PowerShell. And this is at the core of what I wanted to talk about today. PowerShell, for a long time, when I went for the OSCP, when I was just learning, my background is a sysadmin. I like PowerShell. I'm living off the land after all, right? So running Nisheng was natural for me. But then through, experimentation, especially being curious as to if I run Nisheng, a PowerShell-based tool, what happens if somebody's running PowerShell 2, logging like I am doing right now today? What happens? Can they see you? Well, you're about to find out. So let's bring Nisheng and get a reverse shell here. Lucky for us, I already have Nisheng script not in there. Come on. So I already have a shell.ps1, which is a Nisheng script. This is how you say Nisheng. So if you look up on GitHub Nisheng scripts, you will see the whole repo. And I already have Nisheng in my utilities. I have a bunch of tools here. They're all PowerShell scripts. But here's the goal. I went and I just got the reverse shell one, the shell.ps1, and I just moved it here. More. This is what the script does. And it will tell you here, like, Nisheng script can be used for reverse and bind interactive shell from PowerShell from a target. So we're not going to download this to our target. Well, maybe we will. Actually, we will. We're going to run it in a second here. But this script is able to connect to a standard port netcat listening on a port when using reverse switch. Also, a standard netcat can connect to this script, bind specific port. So you can bind, you can reverse. We're going to do a reverse shell. So this thing is going to reach out back to us. So what I did, and here's an example, you can go and load this script, but why bother with all this stuff when you can? So instead of more, let's just tell that thing. I went in on the same exact script and I added this line here. This is a classic OSCP kind of thing. I learned this when I was going through the OSCP. Someone was like, hey, don't bother to stage this script and then run it. It's not necessary. Say, hey, invoke TCP reverse IP address, give the IP address of your system. In this case, the IP address of my Kali here should be 108. So we say, hey, Nisheng, can you just reach back to us? Let's make this easy. On this really, really silly port 444. By the way, people watch for this port. It's a silly port to use, but hey, we're doing a CTF here. What's a better port to use? 53? 443? Maybe any other ports that are commonly used, like 21, if they're doing, ports that people already know. But we're using 444. So that's what we have here. Let's stage it here. So we're saying, hey, we're just hosting here carelessly on any port. Anyone can connect to it, but we would like you to get this shell.ps1. Let's go and call it from our system. In this case, which one should I use? If you're curious what I'm looking at, let me show you. My hacking notes file transfer. All right, niching. This one looks good. Was it 108? I think it was 108. I'll find out here in a second. Okay. So this will download our script here. But I want something. Yeah. So I'll use one of these and I'll explain what it's doing before I run it. Give me 1 second. So we already started our HTTP server. Let's start our listener as well. And we're listening, and we have an HTTP server here, supposed to come back to us. Now let's go back to our browser. Instead of saying, who am I like to run an interesting command. I'm saying, hey, PowerShell, can we run you in execution mode bypass? Meaning, hey, allow PowerShell to run external scripts that are not Microsoft signed, the good stuff. We would like to use new object web client to download our shell.ps1. So what this is going to do is it will download niching, but it just doesn't download niching. It downloads it and executes it. That's the most important thing here. I don't want to do it in 2 steps. I want to do it in 1 step. When I was going for the OSCP, just doing practice and all, this was by far the best way and most reliable one. Because once you put a script there, then you have to come back and say, oh, I put it in temp. Now I got to point to that script and it's sitting in temp. If you are doing that with maybe an executable, Windows Defender took it out. Another thing that I wanted to tell you is if it doesn't work by just putting it in the browser like this, you might want to URL encode this using whatever tool you want. Online tools, you might want to URL encode, or sometimes base64 and base64 decode on the other side, depending on what you're dealing with. But for now, this is what we have. If we hit enter, if it hangs like this, you see a spinning here, that's good news. It's doing stuff. So I jump straight back here. I see I got a GET request, 200 success. So that's good. I'm expecting a shell to have come from here. So now we are in the system. If I say, who am I? I'm in as HTTP SVC. Remember the HTTP SVC service that we saw earlier? That's what we are. But here's a kicker that I didn't think about a long time ago. If you're in as a shell that relies on a browser, this shell is unstable. You might want to migrate this shell to a better service. So the classic thing that I've been seeing lately is maybe create a hidden notepad service, then migrate to it. This case, I'm not migrating to anything. I just want this to tell me what's happening here. So we have the set impersonate privilege, which is a classic privilege that you see on service accounts, because they have to go and do the Kerberos impersonation, which is also a very fascinating attack, by the way. I like that one. Set create global privilege, create global objects. That's interesting. We can create objects. Okay. Add workstation to the domain. Oh, no, oh yeah, this one is disabled, but this one is enabled. Okay. Next, let's do something interesting. Let's move to the classic Active Directory kind of attack. Since we know this is an Active Directory machine, let's call everybody's favorite tool PowerView. People like PowerView, right? We're going to use it here. But before we do that, do you believe that we actually got caught by putting niching there? I think we did. Let's go to Security Onion. This is what we had for our last time. Let me refresh. I hope it has not been 5 minutes. Oh, PowerShell event log did catch us, even though it says it's low. We did get caught 15 times. Like, what's happening here? Who was running PowerShell commands and what system? So these are user-generated errors. Like, what errors? What are we talking about here? Okay. So niching does generate a bunch of noise for the system. That's why we see these user-generated errors. I was looking forward to seeing, like, shell1.ps1 somewhere. But this is just PowerShell logging. So this might not be helpful for you as an attacker. But the log says here PowerShell console is starting up. So PowerShell console was started by niching because we launched PowerShell. So this alert by itself might not tell you a lot, but this alert, together with other funny behavior, can be a good, solid understanding that, well, we're being attacked by a PowerShell tool, especially if you have other evidence that shows, like earlier when we saw what we saw. But if we look through all these 15 events logs, I bet we will actually be able to see our shell shell.ps1. I think it's in the HTTP URI since we started from there. All right, there it is. So we see two ways here in the last 15 minutes. And we were seen by Zik. So we went to /shell.ps1 and we also sent it. Does this command here look familiar? That's exactly what we ran. Well, given, I have to put a disclaimer here, given that we actually ran this using just regular HTTP, if this was HTTPS, this would be a different story, right? You won't be able to see it. But hey, we see that it's download string. And if you are decrypting SSL traffic, then you wouldn't have to worry about this stuff. You'll be able to see it. But we are able to see that niching, while it's a great tool, if they have PowerShell logging enabled on their domain controllers, which I think everybody with a domain controller should have, there's going to be logs for that. And those logs can be sent to a SIEM solution, and they're going to find you, which is a good thing. So if you have a domain controller somewhere that you manage, PowerShell logging can be a great way of doing that. And I will show you after this, like, where you can go to enable it. But so far that works. Let's go to PowerView. So I can, bring PowerView here using setutil. Maybe I should have done that. But I already have it on the system in tools. PowerSploit. So you're going to see that this is just a cloned version of PowerView Git repo. You can find it on GitHub. So it's everything that's in there. For me, PowerView is going to be in my recon, I believe. And look at this, beautiful Windows. Doesn't care about caps. Okay, so let's load PowerView. This is also going to be logged in our PowerShell logs, but Windows Defender will catch PowerView, especially if it's in its default format. I think it will catch it. Don't quote me on that. So maybe renaming this binary might go a long way. At least don't run it with the name, the default name, because there are people who just say, hey, if you see a PowerShell script named PowerView in the PowerShell logs, generate a high alert. It's a lazy alert, but hey, it looks for exactly what it should be. So maybe rename this into something else. But even after you rename it, you still have to run its standard commands, which people have looked. I've seen, actually, I was playing with some rules last week on how to use PowerView, and it actually is easy to detect. People will generate very blanket rules. So here's a resource that I used. Be like, okay, what do people do with PowerView? I'll put this in the comments. But we just loaded PowerView.ps1. Does this actually show up in our logs? And what does that show up as? This can be network data. It should be from the Wazoo agent. Let's see. I'm not confident that we'll catch it this time. Also, do not run commands like this in your production environment. This is just too open. Most administrators will tell you to go £send if you do this, like star.ps1. They will not give you anything. Why? Because you can lock down a database with millions of records by just using wildcard searches. You will be limited. In this case, I'm not limited to anything. I'm just searching, hey, if you saw a PowerShell script, I would like to know more about it. Is it this one? Oh, it's just the shell.ps1. Hey, by the way, this is what your shell.ps1 looks like in PowerShell logs. So PowerView is loaded. Next, let's go and enumerate. First, we can enumerate all domain users. I already have a list of those users. I'm interested in the user that I'm signed in as. What capabilities do I have? So in PowerShell, in Active Directory, a user has different capabilities. You can just be a normal user, nothing to it. You sign in, you sign out within your own scope. You could be an administrator user. You could be a service account user. And with those, there are different levels. What we're after is group memberships. If a user is part of the administrators, bingo, we're in. We're also after, if a user is part of maybe people who can do things, there's people with permissions to write, accounts that can write to any AD object, for example. Accounts that have all permissions on Active Directory, so they can add people to memberships, they can remove people from memberships, they can create Active Directory objects, they can add computers. Those accounts, those capabilities. So we can use the get ACL commands in PowerView, which is something that you can do. But I like to start with the user that I have first before I start poking everybody else. What can I do as this user? And for that, I think I was messing with this for a while. Let's just do this one. Get object ACL, give me the access control list of, capabilities of this. Sysmon name just says, hey, this account, HTTP SVC. And resolve group UIDs, because Active Directory, when you query it, sometimes it doesn't resolve the actual names, like IT admins group name. It will show up as this, now I'm forgetting it. It's a long string. So what you want is, you want those to be GUIDs to be resolved so that you can actually read. Okay, so this one didn't like my command. So maybe let's remove the resolve. Let's just get the object. By the way, that failed attempt there probably got logged as well. So it's an error in PowerShell. And also because of my niching, I should have migrated this service. Okay, so let's go back to our capabilities here. This is the second one. I don't want forests. I think this is the one that I was going for. Return ACLs associated with specific account. Okay, maybe if I specify the name. Yeah, that's what I did. Let's try it one more time. This time I'm actually just going to give it the full command. The two things that you want are the write all permission and also this one that I'm going to show you here. The write DACL. So with this one, you can actually write to objects in the Active Directory domain. You might not be an administrator, but you can write to objects. So let's try this one. All right, so something is not working with my shell. Let me reload PowerView. Maybe it wanted it with the full name. All right, now let's do it one more time. And every time we do that, we're getting logged. And get object is not recognized as a operating program. Check the spelling of the name. If both included, verify the path is correct. So I think it's still trying to use niching. All right. Then one more time. If it doesn't work, then we'll see if we can find an alternative way. I might have to bring another shell. And let's see. Or I just let it run. One of the two. While it's running, I think it's running. Let me go back here and check in the last 5 minutes. What happened is we were trying to do that. Oh, PowerShell logs. We generated a bunch of them actually. In the last 5 minutes, 314 PowerShell events. This is significant because as we were getting errors, error after error, PowerShell was recording all the errors. Another indicator that something is up is a bunch of errors in your system. In this case, these PowerShell event logs will actually show us what's actually happening if we drill down to them. Mohammed says he got the same problem with Mojo. Okay, let's see if we can get that one figured out. So here is the noise that we're generating. All right. So we had PowerView, TCP, get ACL. Let me try one more time with just, instead of get object ACL, what about something interesting? I'm going to try to see if we can find interesting stuff. Find interesting domain SEO. That's another module. This is going to be looking for HTTP SVC. Seems to be hung. Give it a second. Hopefully it comes back. And this is ethical hacking for you. The things that you know work that you have used before. You show up on a target. The target is like, nah, it's not going to work. That's why the OffSec people always say, try harder. If you are like, oh my God, this is frustrating, and you bang your head on the wall, that's how they eliminate people who are not persistent and those who can. I hate the try harder mentality. I think, it should be something different, more motivational than try harder. But try harder, I don't think those are positive terms. It's more like, hey, you can do it or something better. All right, so it looks like we are running. So find interesting domain SEO. We'll find any interesting access control list permissions that we have on the domain. In this case, I'm saying, give me for HTTP SVC. Just to make sure that for the sake of time, let's go back. Where's my system? While that is running, let me introduce you to this PowerShell. And let's run the same exact commands that we're running, just in case. Well, this is important that we see it. So get object SELs. Let's see if this gives us results. This one is still running. All right, this is this is what should have happened, okay, when I ran it. But with Nisheng, it looks like our shell is kind of unstable. But here's what we should be looking at here. It's a lot of noise, and I don't like it. Because now that means that I need to scour through this. But what you'll notice is Active Directory rights here is going to be read property. So we can read in Active Directory. Just keep going. Oh, that's interesting. So if a generic or, that's not nice. There you go. Googling in real time. If you downloaded this machine, it did not have generic OR. I think you had read access to it. So using PowerView, let's check. Okay, that's what we just did. Okay. We can reset users delegate password without knowing the current password if you have the generic OR. In this case, we actually don't have generic. When I set the machine and set it out, you did not have generic OR. You had read permissions. You actually had the read and write, the write property. So we can use this one. Here's the write property. Okay, so using this, get object SEO resolve group IDs, CN is equals admins, and yeah, that's too long of a command. But if we go back here, if this worked for us, we can try to stabilize this shell by getting another one, which is going to be better, and then it will work. I thought it was working earlier. You probably need to get a second shell or something finishing. But once we get it to work, we can actually say, okay, according to our results here, we have, let's say, generic OR, which means you can modify objects. And here's the weird and crazy thing about this. A user account could just be an IT admin account, but it's not an enterprise admin or a domain admin account. It's just a custom group, but they'll give it permission to write to every object, right? So that user can add themselves to the admin group if they wanted to. That user can add other people to the admin group, but by default, they're like, well, you're not going to be in the admin group, but you can write to the admin object. That's one of the way. And if you have generic, or you can write to anything in the domain. You can create, computers and things like that. So in this case, let's go and add ourselves to the domain admins group while we're there. Net use HTTP underscore SVC. Let's see. First, you see that we are part of the IT admins. That's why we have that permission. We are not in the domain admins group here. So let's add ourselves. But since we are part of the IT admins, we can write, but we cannot. But we are not part of the group. So let's just add ourselves to that group, and then check immediately, make sure that we actually were able to be added. So net group, domain admins, is a group that we saw earlier. Let's add our user, HTTP SVC, to be part of that. Okay, so it says net group, domain admins, HTTP SVC, access denied. Let's see if we can reset our password according to what we had there. Net group. Let's try one more time. Domain admins, HTTP SVC. I would like to add myself to that. Let's see. All right, so we're getting the access denied, which makes me believe that we might not be what we think we are. So let's verify that. I'm going to rerun this one. Thank you. I hope by brute forcing my domain control, I did not lock myself out. That would be funny. That would be funny. So I'm in the domain here. Let me see if I can find some interesting information. HTTP underscore SVC. If for whatever reason I reverted to a wrong snapshot, I'll show you how the misconfiguration works. Okay, that's too much noise. Let's actually look through this. What I'm interested in is the Active Directory rights. You see this? We can write to Active Directory. We have the right property. That's what we're after. So I don't know what they're talking about. I know we can write there. Let's try something maybe interesting. According to our document, we should be able to reset a password. Let's construct the command together. Did I have an error in there? All right, let's try one more time. Maybe, just maybe, the command wasn't right. All right, come back here. Paste net group domain admins HPSPC. I don't think it cares. So did this work? Did this not work? So the second time here, it worked. You tell me, this command here and this command, the only difference is domain admins was in caps and this time it wasn't in caps. So where am I? Such O. Okay, IT admins, domain users. Let me rerun that command. We will not move 1 and 2 a part of the domain admins group. Yeah, it looks like it worked. It's only in IT admins though. I'm waiting for the domain group. So if you're curious on what I just did, I just came here and I just copied this command and I went and ran it over here. I just had to edit it a little bit to make sure that it's HTTP SVC. One more time. I think there's a timer on the back end as well where Active Directory needs to sync. Well, now it's saying error access denied. You gotta be kidding me. Let's see. Okay, let's do it this way. I'm getting a second shell here. Something went wrong, command execution. Okay, so this thing is complaining. Okay, I gotta ban somebody. So this will take a second here. I think what happened is what I mentioned earlier. When you have these HTTP based sessions, they might actually time out and you're at the mercy of them working correctly. So right now I'm just listening and hoping it actually calls back and it's spinning. All right, while it's loading, we'll get a new shell here. Then we'll be able to go and see. But with all the errors that I just generated here, that should have generated more interesting alerts as well, other than PowerShell. In fact, if I had changed the membership of a domain users group, I should have received an alert. It should say, hey, this user's membership has been changed. Net group domain admins test user add domain. Yeah, let's try to add a test user. Hey, yeah, it's good to see you, Kumar. Thanks for joining. Let's go here. Oh, I forgot one thing. I gotta stage my port to get my shell. So it's spinning. We'll get it in HTTP 200 here. And we should get a shell here in a second. There we go. I just saw it come up. Okay. CDC tools search power. Okay. ls cd dash dev. I think I need to go to the recon. ls. Okay, I'm not going to load Power View. This time I'm just going to add a user. Where am I? Slash net user http underscore svc. Okay. Then let's add our user to domain admins. That's what we want. Access denied. Let's check. I'm just going to do a quick manual check here on this user for sanity check. So if I go to my Active Directory here, let me just look at the properties. In my security, this is where misconfigurations happen, people. Right here. So you see, I'm actually not crazy. This user here has write permissions. They don't have full control, but they do have write permissions. So we're actually going to see if we can write something different then. Such add net group domain admins http underscore svc add. I think that's what we did. Let's do see. So add such domain. I didn't think it had to be a specific domain. Net user. All right, I think we have a glitch. Now let's check it from here as well. The main. SVC. I'm just running it from a different computer. Then in this case, okay, so it works from here with the same user, but not from here. Am I such? Oh. Okay, I don't know why, but I verified that we had right permissions to the domain, and we could add a user ourselves to a group. But someone with my niching shell didn't want to work, kept saying permissions denied, but I know it works. So you just have to take my word for it on that one. But the most important thing here is if you run power exploit tools and there is Active Directory logging, especially for PowerShell, you are going to get caught. Let me show you one last thing here before we call it a night, because I know we spent some time here. Let's maybe look at, if we go to CC internals, there's another tool as well that people really like to run, and it's called Sysmon. I showed you in a video that, if you run Sysmon, you're actually going to get caught, because usually when you are a local administrator and you want to go to be maybe NT authority, the easiest way is just run Sysmon, and then Sysmon will elevate your privileges, and now you can run things, as a system. And why do you think you might want to do that? You might want to do that so that maybe you can access a lot of other accounts that you might not actually have access to. Maybe there is local policies that says even though you're an administrator, you might not be able to visit this account. In this case, there is a flag on the Vagrant users desktop that we're interested in. So let's first use run Sysmon 64.exe, and this Sysmon is going to give us the ability to actually just, in this case, become system. I think I had Sysmon somewhere here. My history. So this is what we ran all the way today. So with PSExec, first thing that we do is you need to accept the EULA or the license agreement. You cannot run it without accepting the EULA. In this case, we're trying to connect to local system. Couldn't install PSExec service connecting to local system. By just doing this, let's do it. Who am I? We're still that user, but by just doing what we just did here, we actually triggered an alert. I think it should have showed up here. By running PSExec. Oh, here's also the other things. If you run the permissions changes for Active Directory, and if it's being monitored, you get this security global member added to this. This is where we were resolving. You can resolve this name here back to domain admins. This string here represents domain admins. But here's another one. PSExec was found on the machine, and this is a medium vulnerability, alert. This is actionable because nobody should be running PSExec on systems. Nowadays, there are better tools if you're doing management of the domain than PSExec. So this is something that will be interesting. This one just said, hey, we saw someone accepting the EULA, meaning you are accepting the end user permissions. So let's run it without accepting the EULA, because that's how you would actually run it. If you run it this way, it will actually pop up a new terminal. In this case, I'm inside of my niching shell, so it won't pop up a new terminal for me, but this is what it should do. That's why this connecting error keeps showing up. So it's connecting to local system. So if you had a graphical user interface like this one, which in this case, if you add yourself to the group, domain admins group, you can reset your own password, RDP into it, and you're in. So it's connecting to system because that's what it does. And if we run it from a PowerShell where we actually have graphical user interface, I'll show you what that looks like. I showed you this in a very short video, by the way, but this is what people like to do. You get a new shell. Yes. So this is just lateral movement, but for a good cause, right? Hey, I see two people are here. As you can see, we got a system shell here, which you might not have gotten if you were not part of the domain admins user. Then from here, we can just say cdc users vagrant desktop. If you do an ls, I actually put a flag there. There was also a reverse shell that was there, but there's a flag.txt. And the flag gave you this long string. I hope I can copy it. Okay, let's get the flag. So this is the flag that I had put out there for you. You might notice it's just a random string, right? Or I wasn't in the business of putting random strings on my machines. Echo. This one didn't end with the classic base64 equal sign. But I hope you found out that it was base64 minus D, I think. And there it is. Great things happen to those who don't stop believing, trying, learning, and being grateful. I believe in continuous learning, and we get better every day. So if you saw this train wreck of a live stream today and you are like, yeah, man, that seems like a tough thing. Being an ethical hacker sometimes involves a lot of persistence, trial and error, and also knowing the basics. If you know the basics and you believe you're on the right path, you are likely to persist. Like right now with that niching reverse shell, I would spend some time trying to figure out why did it need to work when it had the correct permissions. That's just part of the deal. But yay, thanks everybody for being here. I see people are already asking like how things are going. I think this is what we had for today. So before I finish here, I'd like to take a minute to show you a couple of things, right? First of all, if you modify security permissions for people, things are going to be seen. If you run psexec, you're going to be seen. How does detection work? How are we detecting all this stuff? You may be like, I don't know. How is this set up? Well, first, install Security Onion. Once you install Security Onion, go ahead and SSH into your Security Onion instance. There's a few things you need to do. Out of the box, it will not do a lot of detection, right? In this case, this is my user. So we're going into our intrusion detection system. We need to decode this. Okay, I just reinstalled my intrusion detection system, so it's complaining about that. We don't care. Let's wipe all of them. Yes, get me in. All right. And we're in. Let me show you some of the rules that were in action tonight, if you're interested. For starters, you need to be looking at a couple of things here. There's a few things that you want to do. First of all, you want to enable the Wazoo agent. Let me show you my history in here. Yeah, 122 will show us. For host-based intrusion detection system, you have your rules in the local rule set rules.xml. These are going to be the rules that you create. If you create any custom rules, you put them in here. But if you do an ls, that's LA, you notice that we also have rule set, which is just a system link to this location here. If you say ls rule set, you're going to see that we have a bunch of rules in here and decoders. These are the default rules that come preloaded in the system. Some of them work, but you're gonna need more rules in here for this thing to actually work. But these are the default host-based intrusion detection system rules. If you install an agent on your endpoints, these rules will be used for that. But here's another one. In my local rules here, this is where I mess with things. So let's cat. Here is where we put a rule, and right away we have a rule for PSExec. I did not write this rule. I found it somewhere. I don't remember where. But I was messing around. I was like, okay, PSExec, can we actually detect that? We have different options here. So the rule that fired here was this one. It was looking for NT authority system. So if PSExec was used as a parent process and NT authority system was spawned afterwards, that's what you will see. Here's another one. Okay. So if you are looking at this, you're like, well, I have no idea what this is. A few things to note here. If you're going to be using rules, say, from other people, make sure that the rule IDs don't clash. I've actually done that where I just copied somebody's rule and I put it in here. The rule ID clashes. The level, that's the severity of the alerts of the rule. And then you can define some fields here. In this case, we're looking for Windows events. And we're looking for this registry key. In this case, we're just pointing to PSExec SVC. This is why I was saying if you rename these binaries, some of these rules might be even be bypassed. So if it sets up a value, NT authority system. So this is where we can actually add the rules, and you can define the MITRE attack type. So this is probably a lateral movement in here. This is added to your Security Onion, which is free, by the way. You can install it in here on the local rules.xml. This was just the PSExec. So out of the box, Security Onion will not have caught this. I added these ones here from someone's GitHub page somewhere. I don't remember where I found the rule. Or you can look if you already have these rules, and then they'll just fire. And I find that fun because, I mean, running a 2 and, PSExec gives me system fun. To run a 2 and look at the Windows event logs and be able to ship those logs to an intrusion detection system. Now that's where the money is at, right? Then you can actually look at your logs in depth, and you don't just show up to work and somebody says, hey, sit here. You're going to be looking at alerts all day. And if you see this fire, this is what you do. You actually have done it. You have seen it. You know what Sysmon is. You know how Sysmon works. You know what, Zik and data on the network looks like. At that point, your mind is now going to be freed at being creative, looking for interesting data. You're not like already looking in the unknown, right? Yes. All right. So that was where the rules were. I like to add my rules here by hand, and I'm trying to make sure that I don't want to be a rule creator. I don't do rule creation at work, but I like to have an idea of how they're creating those rules. And that helps me be a better attacker. That helps me in understanding, the regex that they can put to catch me if they were interested. And it's just good practice to know, what they're doing on the other side, especially if you're an attacker and you're trying to be a better pen tester, red teamer, not the other type of attacker. All right, so that's where we edit this. The second part of this is on the actual host. On the machine that you want to monitor, you are going to need to go to here, install the Wazoo agent, of course. Then you have an OSEC agent here. This thing needs to be running to monitor your host. And that's not negotiable, not negotiable, right? In the osec.conf, you're going to need a couple of things. You're going to need to tell this agent to look for Windows events. You need to tell it to look for Sysmon events. That way, you actually have visibility to this type of data. So let's do this. You need to add this entry here. So this one here is saying, hey, agent, can you please go and grab all Sysmon events from this system? That this is universal, whether you're using the OSEC agent that I'm using here, or you're using an Elastic agent, or any other agent that ships logs out. It needs to be told, hey, we need these logs out of here to go to our system. So this is for Sysmon events. If you look down here, I also had to add this. It doesn't come by default. You need to add this one. Say, hey, I need Windows PowerShell operational logs here. I'm gonna kind of need that. So with these two, that's how we were able to see. And of course, there's the generic Windows events, like security events here, that are being excluded, that are being added here. And we're also excluding ourselves. But that's all it takes. Tell an agent to ship logs, go and add some rules on the other side, install all the pieces together, and you can actually do this. So I will even feel confident that you can do this for an employer, a small company with 2,000 people. I'll do this for them and set it up. Make sure that somebody's dedicated to those rules, though, because they can be noisy as you saw. But hey, do this for only maybe the Active Directory machine, the Exchange server if they're still running local stuff, the file server. Not every machine, if you're just starting out, start with the big ones. You will be surprised how much noise you see. Yeah, you'll be very surprised. Hey, Anshadow, thanks for joining. And Samba, it's good to see you. So that's where the money is at here. Let me know if you have any questions. Today, I'll actually stick around. I'll have a timer here, maybe 3 more minutes. I know there's a couple of things that are not, there's a delay here. But hey, let me know if you have any questions. Give me a thumbs up if you thought this was interesting and informative. And we have to fix niching. Oh, InfoSec Kid says Sigma rules. Don't get me started on Sigma rules. Let me show you. I had a Sigma rule that I loaded today that broke my Wazoo. I had to revert. You brought them up, so I'm going to bring them up here. There are things like this. It doesn't take Sigma rules directly, but there are things like this repo here that convert Sigma to Wazoo rules. It's not always clean, I'll tell you that. But they actually give it a warning here, like, hey, you can't just do that. But I actually converted a couple Sigma rules to Wazoo just using simple documentation. But yeah, you can definitely convert Sigma rules into Wazoo in no time using this script. There might be a little bit cleanup, especially when it comes to regex. I found out that not every translation works, so you have to do manual cleanup, especially if you have like the amount of rules that are here. For example, Wazoo rule CSV, Wazoo to sigma.py, these are the tools that you use. I was looking at some Sigma rules that did not work as I wanted to. they broke my Wazoo agent and I had to revert to a different file. But yeah, you can. And also Sigma to Wazoo, they're almost identical. If you're not paying attention, you might not see, you might not notice. There's just slight syntax, really. Awesome. Let me know if you have any other questions. You said you wanted to have my write-up. I'm not sure you mean my notes. Oh, those notes, they're not helpful. I tried to export them last time. You really don't want them. Trust me. You really don't want those notes. They're not helpful at all. Oh, here are some rules. They were updated 17 hours ago. Imagine if you can have all these rules in your Wazoo. Here's some PowerShell events. PowerShell script. Here's all kinds of rules. Yeah, just start small. Don't add a bunch of them at once. I think that will help. Oh no, these are not. And this script block must be enabled. This is what we enabled in my last video, by the way. PowerShell script block logging. You can add that. Yeah, my notes are all over the place. Like I tried to export them and share with people. I was like, what am I sharing? Like, let me show you an example. What does this mean? If I gave you this page here, you'd be like, what is this here for? Even if I went to this rev shell here, what is this JNDI jar jar stuff? Or even this telnet, even though this actually kind of works. Like if you have telnet, you have some commands you can use. I know that because I use them. But if I gave you this, you'll be like, I don't know what this means. You're better off Googling. And BT shared with other people the files last time. I don't know. File transfer. I'm so bad at documenting, but the good thing is my memory can come back. Look at this right here. I said port knocking SSH. That's why I know. I remember very well that these notes, I wrote them when I was going through a machine on VownHub. And I gave myself a link to it. It was a port knocking machine, and I didn't know what port knocking is. It was my first time, and I just wrote a command for knocking the ports, and I put a link to it, in-depth one. All right, sorry about that, man. We can write notes together if you want. Anybody else? All right. Thank you, everybody. This was fun. I really like this Windows Active Directory kind of stuff. I might attack a Linux machine next week, probably another Windows, who knows. But this is really, really fun. And as we get better at this, you might notice that in my notes here, I have, wait a second. I'm going for the OS EP. I should have notes in here for the OS EP. And there's somewhere in here. And you're going to see a lot more interesting and advanced content than just, OSCP stuff, like bypassing antivirus. So some of my future machines are going to have Windows Defender running, so we can actually get in the habit of bypassing it, because in the real world, that's what people are using, right? All right. Thanks, everybody. And I hope you learned something. And I'll see you next week. Thanks for being here.